was written by Thomas Fritz. To be human is to be aware of our separation. We want to love and to be loved by our friends, our parents, our children, but often we feel alone, not knowing the right things to do or the right words to say. We want to live in harmony with the land, the water, the air, the plants, and the animals. But often we feel like clumsy blunderers, estranged from the natural world around us. The confession of our separation is an act of humility, a willingness to admit that we are not as wise or as confident as we appear to be, that inside we sometimes feel lonely and confused. The act of confession is the first step in moving into a relationship. To feel the presence of God, we first stand at a distance, feeling our separation. Then we turn and move into relationship, opening our hearts to other people, to the earth, to sounds of music. In turning, we feel a mutual contact, the reciprocal meeting of the fullness of life between one active existence and another. We call this experience grace. In this experience of grace, we rediscover God in the face of a child, in the hug of a friend, in the sounds of a choir, in the flowers of spring. The spirit of grace enters our bodies and renews our souls. Here ends the reading. Living in a state of grace. Grace is a theological concept in many religions that refers to God's unmerited love and favor towards humanity. It is often seen as a way to receive salvation and forgiveness. However, I find the word grace to be very ethereal, and one of those words that I find hard to grasp because it's often understood as a state of actionless action where the individual is guided by peaceful confidence. The concept of grace is present in many religions, including Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. In Buddhism, grace is a concept that can be understood as a circular blessing, a way to appreciate relationships, and a way to embrace the unconditional compassion of the Buddha. In Hinduism, grace is the idea that divine assistance and enlightenment are available to everyone. It is a central tenet of bhakti yoga and bhakti movements and is considered a blessing that can help people overcome challenges. In Islam, grace is a divine attribute that Allah bestows upon those who have faith and do good works. The Quran mentions grace many times, and the Prophet Muhammad taught that God loves to show grace. Taoism is a philosophy that focuses on living in harmony with nature. Therefore, grace can be seen as the process of growing and achieving one's potential. Because potential is an open-ended word, grace is an ever open-ended process of how one grows. If grace is moving, acting, and living with potential, it's simple to see, yet harder to achieve. Potential shifts meaning faster than any other word in the English language. It's relative to the holder and relative to the moment it's being held. Moreover, since grace connects to potential, this explains why the word grace gets associated with God. Moreover, in many religions, a person finds their potential by connecting to that which is greater. That higher level of potential that is often labeled as God, the divine, or the universe. Now, most Unitarian Universalists, including some of us here, were raised in a variety of beliefs, and we have been left with some unanswered questions. But awareness of our state of being is also part of what brings us together. We all felt the need to believe in something. So what is grace? Well, grace is getting more than we deserve. It's not winning the jackpot, because winning the lottery is the luck of the draw, not grace. Grace shows up in something as simple as finding an unexpected moment of peace while taking a walk, or learning something new and amazing about a friend you've had for years. Or it can be as grand as members of the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, forgiving the individual who shot and killed 9 people at a prayer service in what was described as the deadliest mass shooting at a place of worship. Moreover, President Barack Obama, who delivered the eulogy for the pastor of Emmanuel AME Church, recited the words to the hymn of Amazing Grace before breaking down in tears and singing the hymn unprompted. When asked why he sang, the president said, and I quote, "I had been corresponding with a friend about grace. My friend is an author, and grace is one of the things she writes about." He continues saying, just the notion of grace as recognition that we are fundamentally flawed, weak, and confused, so we don't deserve grace, but sometimes we get it. It can feel like a wave of relief or a spike of pain, but it always leads us to the path of more hope, more trust, more love. Sometimes we encounter grace when we hear a song by a group we've never heard or before, changes our lives, as happened to Joan Baez when she first heard the version of Amazing Grace written and recorded by Zoe Mulford. Baez said that after she heard Mulford's recording on the radio, she just pulled her car over to listen because it was so expressive of her thoughts and feelings that was done in such a way that was both dark and beautiful. Moreover, she continued, for the first few weeks of trying to figure it out on my guitar, I just kept crying. Grace is very patient. It's always there, waiting to happen. And it's polite. It can surprise us, but it doesn't force itself on us. Theologian Paul Tillich tells us that grace strikes us when we are in great pain and restlessness, and when we feel that our separation from life is deeper than usual. Grace is a willing partner and a constant friend, but it never invades, even when our experience of grace feels overwhelming. This is at the core of the universalist message, namely that there's always more than enough grace to go around. Moreover, grace respects many truths. No matter how flawed and lacking, great things emerge from humble beginnings. That one story in a stable, in prison, in the cave, in destitution, in abject poverty, if lived in all sincerity, can liberate the many from darkness. We're all lacking and flawed in some way. Author Mark Twain said, we are like a moon with a dark side that we never show to anybody. However, grace respects many truths. such as that one story in a stable. And if lived in all sincerity, it can liberate the many from darkness. We receive grace not because we deserve it, but because the universe is fundamentally a generous place. Moreover, grace isn't just something we receive. It's also something in our power to give. When we make room for the presence of another, when we're being graceful to one another, whatever the consequences, that's when our divinity and the spirit within shines through. Author Simone Weil informs in Gravity and Grace, all the natural movements of the soul are controlled by laws analogous to those of physical gravity. She says grace is the only exception. Grace fills empty spaces, but it can only enter where there is a void to receive it. And it is grace itself which makes this void. The imagination is continually at work, filling up all the fissures through which grace might pass. Grace might be the great spirit to free us from our hindrances and make the voiceless visible, and lay what is hidden before us, unbind the chains and clarify what is confusing, number of good deeds we can do, and no magic power we can pray that guarantees we receive grace. Unitarian Universalist own John Luther Adams informs in the Guiding Principle for a Free Faith, and I quote, "The affirmative answer of prophetic religion, which may be heard in the very midst of the doom that threatens like thunder, is that history is a struggle in dead earnest between justice and injustice, looking towards the ultimate victory in the promise and fulfillment of grace. And anyone who does not enter into the struggle with the affirmation of love and beauty misses the mark and thwarts creation." End of quote. Because at the heart of every matter, in every perfection and imperfection, in all senses and tenses, in moments of every right or wrong, lies grace, presenting choices to inquiring hearts. Grace recognizes the divine spark in each of us, and when dreaming together, we are infinite. As prayer is but an articulated common dream, we invoke our ultimate concern for the work of faith and long to be hand in hand, creating a world where everyone belongs. I perceive that being in a state of grace is being in that space between where I am and where I want to be. Moreover, in my experience, those people who live in the graceful life, living with the givens of their existence, have not been the undeserved recipients of the gifts of God or fateful coincidence. They have shaped and formed their place in life with deliberate effort, using realities in which they live to achieve balance, integration, and wholeness, which is grace. Unitarian Universalists on John Luther Adams said that human existence is always comprised of both the given fact and the responsible act, meaning that sooner or later, and usually more than once in a lifetime, everyone experiences grace. It may come through the relationships in our lives, or it may come from the mountains and the oceans, or through prayer or meditation. But no matter how troubled our lives are, no matter how out of control events become, or how trampled we feel, we may have been visited by peace and left with the courage to go on. Yes, we do have the givens of our birth and time, in place, society, and culture. Moreover, we also have the givens of our genetic limitations and possibilities. But when we add up everything that goes to make us who we are, we find that we are more than the sum of the parts. Hindu mystic Ramakrishna informs that the winds of grace are always blowing, but you must raise the sail. Grace recognizes the divine spark in each of us, and may we seek to appreciate our breaths to dedicate power. May our eyes seek to appreciate, our arms to embrace each other. When dreaming together, we are infinite. Grace is in the purpose and the journey of mishaps, and in moments of understanding and misunderstanding. But we have to seek and invoke grace and enable the work of Spirit. Grace frees us from our hindrances to make invisible things visible, the voiceless heard, laying what is hidden before us, making the chain unbound, doubting believe, clarifying what is confusing as hardened hearts grow soft to the touch. Because the world was not meant to be possessed by a singular truth, but to be built together upon revelations as we come to fullness with gratefulness and faithfulness to one another. Grace embraces wholeness, universal intelligence, embracing everything but confines nothing, reminding us of the very questions that we have turned away from, that we thought could not be answered or are impossible to realize. When loving fearlessly, we are invincible. When free will is deliberate, we are pivotal. When dreaming together, we are infinite. From my heart to yours, may it be so. Please join in singing hymn number 1017.